The Puck Portfolio with Andy MacNeil.
Hey, welcome to the Puck Portfolio presented by NorthStar Bets. I'm your host, Andy MacNeil. I'll be here weekdays throughout the playoffs, maybe a little bit on the weekends, providing series and game predictions from a betting perspective because the NHL playoffs, they don't stop. It's going to be pretty much straight through right until the Stanley Cup is handed out in June. So drop a like and a comment on this video. Let me know your playoff predictions and subscribe to the Canada Sports Betting YouTube channel to stay up to date. The first weekend of the NHL playoffs is in the books, and it was pretty entertaining, but nothing out of the ordinary, really. Only one series underdog, the Winnipeg Jets, won game one, and they weren't even an underdog in the game. That one was listed at a pick 'em. So, our three series bets are off to good starts as a result. Winnipeg plus 115 on the series line. They're now up 1-0 on Colorado. We've also got Boston to cover the minus 1.5 series spread at plus 170. So they've got to win in 4, 5, or 6 games. And we've got the New York Rangers to cover the 2.5 game series spread. So they've got to win in 4 or 5. Both of those teams are up 1-0 in their matchups against the Maple Leafs and the Washington Capitals. So things are looking pretty good. But let's get into that matchup between the Boston Bruins and the Toronto Maple Leafs. NorthStar Bets has the Boston Bruins at minus 137 currently on the game two money line. The Maple Leafs coming back on the other side at plus 118. Of course, Boston won the first game 5-1. Jeremy Swayman stopped 35 of 36 shots over in against the Maple Leafs on Saturday. The Bruins, they opened the scoring at 2:26 of the first period on their first shot, and they held the lead for the remainder of the game thanks to some timely scoring. It looked like Toronto was going to even things up at times, but the Maple Leafs, they lacked discipline in game one, that's for sure. Max Domi making his presence felt in all the wrong ways. But they also lacked their second leading scorer, William Nylander. He was not available for game one. Nylander did skate on Sunday in an optional skate. He was on the ice on Monday morning, which kind of created some optimism around his availability for game two, but looking more questionable than probable now because he stayed on the ice following the practice with the other scratches. He did not partake in line rushes on Monday. So, yeah, not looking good for Willie's availability for game two. And as a result, that hurts Toronto's chances of getting back in this series. So, Boston is a minus 235 series favorite right now. And that lines up exactly with my forecast, which suggests the Bruins should now be a minus 234 series favorite. They've got about a 70% chance of winning this matchup up 1-0. But yeah, a little bit of uncertainty here as far as whether Nylander will play or not. I was kind of expecting him, and I think everybody else was as well, to be back in the lineup for game two, even if he wasn't necessarily at 100%. But yeah, let's bring in Jeff Fayette from Canada Sports Betting to talk a little bit about this series between the Maple Leafs and the Bruins, get a Toronto perspective. All right, bringing in Jeff Fayette from CanadaSportsBetting.ca. Jeff, I'm not going to ask you how you enjoyed Game One because I think there's, the answer is pretty obvious. But, what did you think of the Maple Leafs' performance in Game One? And, now with Willie Nylander looking, I guess, more questionable than probable heading into Game Two. How do you see game two playing out? It's kind of like a two-part question there, I know, but yeah, I'll get your thoughts on game one and what you see for game two.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Like you look at that game and it seems like it seems like most of their weaknesses and concerns going into this kind of came into fruition. The fact that their blue line struggled to move pucks at a decent level. Boston was very happy to use their forecheck to get on their case and pressure them into basically chipping things straight back to them. That wasn't great. They seem very interested in taking the whole snot thing and trying to impose a sense of dominance on the Bruins, and that very much didn't work. I think the most obvious example was that very first goal. Ryan Reeves goes for an out of place hit, causes an on-man rush the other way, and all of a sudden Boston's up 2 minutes in. But that kind of stuff continued throughout the game. Once they got away from it, it got a bit closer. But Still not too great. And then just the general lack of discipline. Like you can look at those penalties, and I know there's a lot of Toronto fans being like, "Oh, power plays are 5-2. This is the reffing coming to mess with us again." But there's some really sloppy stuff there. Max Domi slash on Brad Marchand, Austin Matthews' high stick. Even Benoit's first his hooking call. It's again sloppy stick work. It's Sheldon Keefe talked about how that kind of stuff can't really happen. So when you look at all that kind of compound, and like not to take away from Boston, they played their game to a T. Jeremy Swayman was great, but it definitely doesn't send a good message for the Leafs off the hop. As far as Nylander goes, obviously he's questionable for tonight. He returned to morning skate yesterday. He was part of today's skate as well. Did get into some drills and was wearing a blue jersey, indicating he'd be in the top six, but so were seven other guys. It doesn't seem likely that he's in tonight. That's obviously a huge loss for the team.
Yeah.
Whatever it is with him, whether it is an injury, an illness, whatever it may be, it couldn't come at a less opportune time for them, given the success he's had in previous postseasons. He's usually the one guy of the Stars that you can rely on to give you a full effort. So that's a big blow, and the fact that it doesn't look like they're making any lineup changes going into tonight definitely raises a few questions too.
Yeah. As far as Nylander goes, I mean, we talked before the series started about just how important Toronto's offense was going to be. We thought, I think you agreed with me that Boston maybe has a slight edge on defense, but a bigger edge in goal specifically. And so it would be important for Toronto to, bring the offense and outscore the Bruins. But clearly they did not do that in game one. I think Boston got some pretty timely scoring. At times when it looked like Toronto was maybe starting to, turn the tide in their favor, and then the Bruins kind of would just choke that out. A little bit of luck there for sure, not to discredit the Bruins, but got to be honest about that. But speaking of luck and everything like that, I saw you had some thoughts on the whole expected goals debate, as that favored Toronto pretty heavily. As we know, there was a period of a flurry there of chances. I believe it was on the 4 versus 3 power play that
Yeah.
Toronto had, that really inflated those expected goals numbers. But do you look back at this as a game that was a winnable game for Toronto, or was it just one where Boston, for me, I think Boston played with some purpose, a lot of purpose in the first 40 minutes. They didn't, necessarily control things all the time, but they seem to be in control, if that makes sense. But I didn't think that was necessarily the case in the third period. Of course, the game was kind of at a reach at that point. But how do you see things like, if they had played that game over again, do you think the score would be much different?
I think there's room that it could have been. I mean, they had some unlucky breaks. Austin Matthews getting around everybody, including Swayman, and hitting the post felt like a really big
Drysidle
turning
would have
point in
scored
that
on
game.
that.
I feel like a lot of people normally would have scored on that. Matthews would have usually scored on that, but that was definitely a turning
It
point
was
for
a
them.
tough
They're going to
angle.
start.
That's like, I mean, that was a pretty tough angle. It was doable, but it was tough.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, that made a difference to them. Though those two goals that came off of the Domi and Matthews penalties, both of the Brust goals, obviously that doesn't really work to their favor. And even that power play, like the big expected goals debate was around one of the models rating them as worth like 4 goals during that power play, which I think is significantly off. We'll go with that. But they still had several opportunities to score in that moment, couldn't pull it off. And it was one of 2 or 3 flurries they had. They had one at the end of the first during the delayed penalty for that power play. And they had one good sequence in the third period that ultimately got them their lone goal that was good too. If you have a few more of those, if you're controlling them with a little bit more tempo, especially in your breakout, that's probably going to be in your favor. And then the goaltending was a big difference too. Like Swayman had a fantastic game. Samsonov's had better nights. I don't think he was quite. You can blame him on all 5, but I don't think it was his best. So like all those factors added together, sure, there are definitely scenarios where that game could have been closer or even gone the other way. But overall, when you consider the way Toronto executed, and that a lot of the luck or the quote unquote bad luck was self-inflicted at times. They ultimately got what they deserved. Boston was the better team overall that night, I felt. Um, it doesn't necessarily show it in the numbers, given they had the lead for 57 minutes and they didn't have to worry as much. But I think the proper team won that game, and we'll see what happens tonight.
For sure. I just wanted to hear you say it, but yeah, great stuff, Jeff. Appreciate you joining the show today. We'll catch up with you after games 2, game 3, game 4. Probably won't need to recap anything else because trending in that direction. But we will see you at least 3 more times to
For sure.
recap the Maple Leafs
Hopefully a little
improvements.
more than that.
Yeah, I hope so too because it's
Yeah.
it's great cinema, right? It's awesome. Regardless of who wins, let's just have a good series and
Yeah.
everybody can have fun. All right, thanks, Jeff.
Cheers.
All right, great stuff from Jeff as always, but I think he was a little bit nicer to the Maple Leafs than he really wanted to be. Maybe we'll get some more venom spewing out of Jeff in future appearances on the show. But moving on to game 2 between the New York Islanders and the Carolina Hurricanes. New York, they played almost a perfect road game in game 1. They held Carolina to just 13 shots on goal in the first 40 minutes. Everybody was surprised to see that. I think that was one of the more surprising things that we've seen in these opening matchups. The Islanders outshot the Hurricanes 8-7 in the first period, 13-6 in the second period, but they only managed to beat Frederik Andersen once. And Carolina scored the go-ahead goal just 3:44 into the third period. They sealed the victory with an empty net goal. The game, I think, was a lot tighter overall than most people expected. You do see that in game 1 often. But yeah, Carolina now a minus 800 favorite to win the series. My forecast says they've got an 87% chance of winning this one now that they've taken a 1-0 series lead. So they should be closer to minus 675. But the Islanders, they're listed at plus 575. So definitely not recommending a bet on New York to win this series. I think just like Michael Leboff of the Action Network's Line Change podcast said when he was on the show during our Eastern Conference preview video, I think it's, this is a series that you approach from a game by game, perspective if you are interested in backing the Islanders, which I don't think is necessarily a wild, insane move. I just don't think there's any value in doing it. I think the series is mostly uh, priced correctly. I think the games are mostly priced correctly. I was talking to Leboff earlier today, though, about how this will just be the second time next to game 1 that New York has been plus 200 or bigger. They didn't close longer than plus 187 during the regular season, so kind of uncharted territory for the Islanders being this big of an underdog. But I think it's the correct move here. I think the betting market has this one priced pretty much where it should be, and yeah, not all that interested in it. Game 1 of the Battle of Florida was pretty tightly contested too, at least in the first 2 periods. I think the Panthers were, really strong in the final frame despite allowing a late goal. Florida outshot the Lightning 28-19 in the game, but very low event game. 22 of the total shots came in the third period. I've got the Panthers listed as a minus 333 series favorite now. Sportsbooks have them closer to minus 410. Lightning, though, they're just plus 315 on the series price right now. So not really any interest in backing the Lightning at those odds. I would want closer to that plus 360, plus 365, plus 370, something like that, to even consider that one. I do think this one, is far from over. Like if Tampa Bay can continue to be pretty decent defensively and, keep Florida's offense at bay, maybe they've got a shot here. But yeah, considering how much hype this matchup gets, like I said, pretty boring game, all things considered. A little bit of drama at the end. It was tight, so yeah, not a wash by any means. But I'd expect future games in this series to be played at a similar pace. But there are a lot of dangerous players on the ice in this one, so we could see things get out of hand. But I would expect this one to be a tight checking. Tightly contested series, and yeah, the Panthers, they could run away with it, but I don't think they're going to necessarily run away with any of the games. So that'll be a good one to watch going forward. But hopefully we'll see a little bit more action because just a really low event first couple of periods between Florida and Tampa Bay. Not low event though. Game one between Colorado and Winnipeg. What a wild game. Easily the most entertaining game of the first round so far. They were tied at 3-3 to end the first period. So things were wild right from the start. Jets jumped out to a 4-3 lead. They took that into the second intermission. Then in the third period, they scored 6 more goals. Winnipeg extended its lead by 2 more. The Jets led 7-4 at around the midpoint of the third period. And Colorado, though, they stormed back with just 30 seconds remaining. They made it 7-6, but the Jets were able to hold on for the win. So I think there's some betting value on Winnipeg at -160 to win this series. I think they should be priced at -180. But if you didn't have enough conviction to buy on the Jets at +115 prior to the start of this one, I don't think this is a time to buy in on Winnipeg. Of course, Hellebuck probably isn't going to let in 6 goals again in the series. That's something that you don't see very often. Of course, he held Colorado to 2 or fewer goals in each game this in the regular season. But I think it's worth something that the Avs were able to kind of get the monkey off their back against the Jets and put up a bunch of goals. So Colorado, they owned approximately 65% of the shot attempts and expected goals according to Evolving Hockey. So I think things got pretty messy, and the Jets were probably pretty lucky to hold on for the win there. So yeah, I'm happy with my series bet at +115. I'm not going to buy out or anything like that. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend investing in the Jets at this point. I'm glad I did before the series. Hopefully they can clean things up, come out with a more complete effort. It was great that they had all the scoring that they did. But I'd like to see a more complete effort all around from Winnipeg. This one lined as a pick'em currently at NorthStar Bets. The Avalanche a -107 favorite, or not favorite, -107 on the money line heading into game 2. The Jets -109. The game that I do have some interest in, though, I'm going to get involved in this series for the first time. I was, kind of borderline on the fence about Nashville heading into game 1. Of course, they lost game 1, but they put in a pretty good effort, and I mean, just wild scenes. As the Canucks took a 3-2 lead, scoring just 12 seconds apart to tie the game. That was Pius Sutter and Dakota Johnson. They scored just 12 seconds apart to tie the game and then take the 3-2 lead. Just an absolute wild scene in Vancouver. And I'd argue it was the most exciting 15 seconds of the playoffs thus far. But the margins, they were really tight in this game. Vancouver owned just 52% of the unblocked shot attempts. And up until Nashville pulled the goaltender late in the game, the Canucks only owned 48% of the expected goals in all situations. So this was a really even matchup. It was a 15-second flurry there where Vancouver scored 2 goals to go ahead, but they trailed 1-0 and 2-1 in the game. This could have easily gone the other way. Nashville, I don't think we saw necessarily their best game overall, but they played pretty good, and I think they can be even more aggressive. So I'd like to see the Preds get a victory in game 2. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I think they should be around a +127 underdog. Great price at NorthStar Bets right now, +138 on the game 2 money line for the Preds. I even found a +142 and a +145 out there, though. So yeah, I'm locking the Predators in at +138. Give me them for 1 unit. I think this one's, roughly about 11 cents off. I think they should be closer to +127 on the money line. So yeah, 1 unit on the Preds, +138 or better to win 1.38 units. Let's go Nashville. Not hating on the Canucks. I'm not. I just taking the value. I think there's been a little bit of an overreaction here. I thought Vancouver was priced a little bit too high before the series started, and they won game 1. Great for them. But yeah, I don't think the margins are wide enough here in this matchup to make them as big of a favorite as they are. heading into game 2. But that pretty much does it for today's episode of the Puck Portfolio. We will be here throughout the NHL playoffs, like I said, providing series updates like today, and yeah, hopefully help you make some informed bets throughout the NHL playoffs. Going to get into some Conn Smythe Trophy odds this week as we kind of survey things. The one bet that I am considering adding, though, talked about this with Lieboff. He brought it up on the show last week. Charlie McAvoy didn't have the best game against the Toronto Maple Leafs, at least, through the lens of, shot for percentage, expected goals for 4%. He got kind of hemmed in, if we're being honest, but he did have 2 assists in the game. He played big minutes. And if the Bruins can go on a run here, I think you've got to consider McAvoy at 90-1 to win the Conn Smythe Trophy. But I'm not in a rush here to back anybody to win the Conn Smythe Trophy. I think there's plenty of opportunities. We'll be talking about this right up until the Stanley Cup final. Of course, we do want to try to add some players to our portfolio here, but I like to let a couple of games play out and see how things are. Hell, we could be looking at a second round where some of the best players in the NHL are not involved in it, like Nathan McKinnon, Austin Matthews, Nikita Kucherov, hell, even Connor McDavid. You never know what the Los Angeles Kings have up their sleeve. They've taken game 1 against the Oilers in the last 2 playoff meetings, and that series gets underway here on Monday night, as does the Dallas Stars and the Vegas Golden Knights. You can check out my thoughts on both of those matchups in our Western Conference preview video that we posted on Friday. So you check it out and find out what I think about that. But until next time, good luck with your bets, enjoy the games, and please gamble responsibly.